before we open the session, let's just step back into a few moments silence. So warm greetings to you all. I don't think our speaker tonight requires much introduction. He's a consultant psychiatrist based in Kolkata and Pondicherry, and he works with consciousness paradigms in health and psychology. He conducts workshops on personal growth and is founder editor of NAMAH, the Journal of Integral Health. He's author of the book Integral Health and has developed a module of consciousness-based psychology with Michael Mievich in the US, based on the wisdom of Aurobindo and NAMAH, and he has co-authored a book recently by that name. The subject of his session tonight is Purification of the Senses, mystical perspective. So over to you, Dr. Soumitra Basu. Hope you all enjoy this session.
Thank you, James. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, very much so.
So welcome all of you to the last day of the program. And we'll be speaking today on the purification of the senses from a spiritual perspective. Now, if you see that reality is considered to be Satchidananda, Satchit Ananda, there are, of course, not three different terms, additive terms. It is the same thing in three different poises. What is existence, Sat, that is consciousness, Chit, and that is Ananda in another poise. Now, sensation, emotion, thought, will, they are all our efforts to experience the delight or the bliss or the ananda or the rasha of creation in physical level, at the level of the physical consciousness. So what we call sensation, of course, there are other sensations also, which is outside the purview of our use of the term sensation. But what we call sensation is an attempt to understand, to reflect, to translate the delight of existence, the rasha, or the what we call the ananda of existence, in physical terms, in physical consciousness, in terrestrial consciousness, in a divided consciousness, and therefore it is very difficult. You see, in a divided consciousness, to feel the purity of the Satchidananda is very difficult. It is impossible. And that is why our senses are prone to error. Our emotions, they bring happiness, but they also bring unhappiness. Our thoughts, they are also besieged by doubts and contradictions. And our will turns into desire. So you see that it is very difficult, it is impossible to understand at the level of the divided consciousness this supreme delight or ananda of Satchidananda. You see, you can understand pleasure, but together with pleasure there will be pain also. You can understand light, that together with light there will be darkness also. So always the opposite should be there. In a divided consciousness, always the opposite should be there. So in a divided consciousness, you cannot understand the purity of these senses. You cannot. Now, if you see, if you try to understand the sensory functioning, we try to understand two things. Usually, I'm not talking about spiritual terms, I'm talking about our usual terms. One is the neurological substrate that analyze the perception, the phenomenon of perception, the phenomenon of senses. And that is why the perception psychologists, there are psychologists called perception psychologists. It's a special faculty of psychology, perception psychology. And they try to understand the phenomena of, suppose, a phantom limb. Phantom limb is what, for those who are unaccustomed with the term, that somebody has, say, lost a leg, but he doesn't believe, he doesn't feel that he has lost a leg. He may jump from a wall, injuring oneself. So there must be some neurological process that undermines this whole phenomena, that your leg is not there, but you feel that the leg is there. Or how the blind, they are unable to see, but they can pass physical obstructions. How they can do that? So all these neurological substrates are very important to understand the sensory perception. This perception psychology study all these things. But the second thing which is very important to us is that the values that we impose upon the senses. We impose values upon the senses. For example, we believe, we see, we perceive that the sun is going around the earth. So there is a practical value, a pragmatic value we are imposing on the senses, a phenomenal value. But that is not the truth. The truth is the opposite. The earth is moving around the sun. But we see the sun moving around the earth, and in that case, what you call this phenomenal truth has been able to help us to design our whole day into between sunrise and sunset. Though these two terms are misnomers according to science, the word sunrise and sunset are misnomers. But we are trying to organize our whole day activities according to sunrise and sunset and according to this phenomenal observation that we see. But that is not the truth. If you want to send a rocket to a moon, then we have to impose error-free values upon the senses. We have to go to rationality and we can find out error-free values upon the senses. So then science brings rational values to the senses. So what is usually the usual values, the usual phenomenal values to the senses, together with it, science brings rational values to the senses. Then art brings beauty to the senses. If art didn't bring beauty to the senses, we would not have understood beauty. We would not have been able to appreciate beauty. So because arts apply aesthetic value to the senses, we can understand what is beauty. Then religions, they put moralistic values upon the senses. Religions put moral values upon the senses. Now, how far that is right, that is a question, because moral values are not 100% perfect. They are partly intuitive, but they are partly imaginative also. But in any case, religion imposes moral values upon the senses. And then there is the spiritual and the mystic traditions. The spiritual and the mystic traditions, they impose experiential values upon the senses, which may not be in line with the moral values. That means it doesn't mean that it is going to be immoral, not that, but it imposes experiential values upon the senses, upon experiences, what they have found, what they have lived. Mystics and spiritual people, they impose that on the senses. So you see that the term senses, our sensory perception, is our first gateway to knowledge, but it is also the first barrier to knowledge. It is the first gateway to knowledge, but it is also the first barrier to knowledge. And in a divided consciousness, you cannot believe that you can understand things in its purity. You cannot. One cannot. One just cannot, because the consciousness is divided, which means that the opposite things will always be there. So the delight of Satchidananda, the Ananda of Satchidananda, we cannot fully understand, appreciate there. So what we do, we turn to spiritual discipline and see what spiritual discipline says about this matter. And the spiritual discipline imposes a non-material dimension to the whole phenomenon. It imposes a non-material dimension to a whole phenomenon. It imposes the subject of the spirit, of the self, or the Atma, which is non-material. And in doing so, it upsets the whole balance of perception psychology. In doing so, it upsets the whole balance of perception psychology. So, by introducing the non-material perspective into the matter, by imposing the non-material perspective, by conceptualizing the presence of the spirit or the Atma or the self behind everything, the whole perception is changed. And the change in the whole perception results in three things. One is the junctional zone. There are three things which we will discuss. One is the junctional zone. The junctional zone between the external senses and the subtle non-material world within us. So there is a junctional zone between our external senses and the subtle non-material world within us. There must be a junction. You see, the non-material world cannot function without some connection with the external world. There has to be a connection. There has to be a junction. So this is a junctional zone which is important. So this is number one, the junctional zone. The second is the inner senses, the senses of the inner being or the subliminal being. We'll come to this. And number three is sense in its purity. Sense in its purity, the spiritual sense, the supramental sense, when we get the sense in its total purity. So the first we understand the junctional zone between the external world and our subjective world, our subtle world, our non-material world. So there must be a connection, and this connection is in Indian psychology. It was known as the sixth sense, or it is known as the manush. It is known as the manush, or it is known as the sixth sense. So it connects the external world with the internal mystic world, the internal spiritual world. It connects. So it has an objective side, it has a subjective side also. And it is the sixth sense, in a way, what you call, Aurobindo said that it is the main sense underlying all the other senses. It is, in one way, it is the main sense underlying all the other senses. All the other senses means vision, touch, sound, audition, all these things, the five senses. So all these senses are under the influence of the sixth sense of the manush. And the manush has two actions. When it wants to know the objective world, it is dependent upon the senses. So its action is divided, because the action is dependent upon the senses. Its action is dependent upon the senses. When the manush tries to know the external world, his action is dependent upon our external senses. When it tries to know the internal world, it identifies with them. It identifies with the internal world. So how do we know what is our anger? By identifying with our anger, we know what is our anger. Manoj can also understand things in a subtle way. He can understand the thoughts and feelings of another person in front, regardless of his facial expression or his other cues which he can give. So this is one thing. Now, Manas is something we will try to understand what is Manas. Very short exercise. I will tell you all to participate in this exercise. Very short exercise. I think it is not difficult. You can all participate in this exercise. So I will request all of you to close your eyes and visualize a white board in front of you. Visualize a white board in front of you. Close your eyes and visualize a white board in front of you. And in that board, your name is being written. In that board, your name is being written. And you can see your name at one go. You can see your name at one go. Your name is being written. And you can see your name at one go. So that is a white page in front of you. Visualize a white page in front of you. A pen is writing your name, and when the full name is written, with one chance you can see your full name. And if your name is big enough, see at least half the name. Try to see at least half the name if your name is big enough. And then on the white space, which is empty, on the empty part of the white page, you visualize flowers. It is full of flowers. On the white page, a pen was writing your name. When the name has been written, you could visualize it with your eyes at one go. And then on the empty part of the page, flowers of all hues, of all colors, of all sizes, all shapes have come inside. The page is now full of flowers. The page is now full of flowers of all sizes, of all types, of all hues, of all hues. It is full of flowers. Might be one type of flower, might be different types of flowers. Full of flowers. So the white page, your name was being written by a pen. And then in the empty part of the white page, after your name has been written and after you've been able to see your name, it is full of flowers. And then when it is full of flowers, you pluck one flower. You pluck one flower from there. You pluck one flower from that page and touch that flower. Touch it very softly. Touch these petals, touch the sepals, touch the stalk, the leaves if there are any. Be very careful if there are thorns. Be very careful if there are thorns. You can touch the inside of the flower, the pollen grains. So the flower is there, you have plucked one flower from there and you are touching the flower. You are touching the flower very softly, very delicately, so the flower doesn't wither away. And then you touch the petals, touch the sepals, the leaves, the stalk, the stem is, and inside the pollen grains. Touch the flower very softly. And if the flower has a smell, take the smell. With a deep breath, take the smell of the flower. If the flower has a smell, take the smell of the flower with a deep breath. Take the smell of the flower with a deep breath. And when you have enjoyed the flower, you have touched the flower, you have enjoyed the flower totally, you have touched it at every part, you have smelled it. If the flower has a smell, then put it back to its place. Put it back to its place. You can open your eyes now. You can unmute yourself and you can tell what flowers you have seen and what you have, if you have smelled any. Unmute yourselves. Not many are there. It will not take much time.
I saw a purple pansy.
Acha? And you smelled?
And it was a very, very faint smell, but the petals were made of velvet. I could feel that.
Good. Joyশ্ree?
Yes, I saw the jasmine, and it was the whole name was just covered with jasmine, white jasmine. And the fragrance was beautiful. It just transported me to another dimension. And the touch was very, very soft and very delicate. So I had to be very careful touching the petals. But it was a beautiful experience, especially the fragrance and the touch of the little flower. It was like a presence.
Alison?
I don't know what type of flowers I had, but I had a beautiful variety of different colors. The flower I selected was pink, and I was very gentle with it because I didn't want to knock off any of the petals. It was full of life. I even started imagining little insects enjoying the flowers as well. And the fragrance was beautiful. I don't know what type of flowers I had, but they were beautiful.
Janitri?
Azaleas, pink ones, daffodils, carnations, and a freesia, a purple one. And at first I was holding the azalea, and then it switched to the freesia. Not a lot of smell though.
Maha?
Yeah, it was a purple flower. I don't know the name, with 4 petals, very delicate. But when you told us to sense the other parts, it changed to another flower, also purple. And the smell was so beautiful. It's very beautiful experience. Thank you.
So Sashwati Bhattacharya has said it touched rose and the smell is still there. Any other?
I saw many flowers, but the one that I picked was chrysanthemum. Had a very white chrysanthemum, and as if it came out from the white paper, it felt like, and it had a very faint fragrance.
Good. Yes, Venugopal?
I saw many flowers. I'm not sure what they were, but there was a purple looking flower. It was glowing, and I tried to imagine the smell of a lavender.
Okay. Chetna? Any other? Chetna? So your voice is not being heard.
Did you,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, we can, Chetna.
Okay. So for me, it was a pink carnation. it was a carnation, and yes, I mean, it's interesting because recently I read somewhere that the pink carnation is a gift of the mother for her love, something like that. I mean, it's a gift, yeah. And I mean, those are the flowers that also around my birthday, that is in September, those are the flowers that are like the best quality available. And somehow, I mean, like I just happened to read about it. And yeah, I mean, that's all I can share.
James, will you say anything?
Sorry.
No, for you it's okay. I'm asking James.
Oh, yeah. I saw plasticity actually. Lots of plasticity flowers, which doesn't usually have a smell, but there was a nice smell actually, a very fragrant smell. But I saw plasticity with the yellow petals and the yeah, lots of plasticities.
Any other input?
Vrinda?
Yes, so I saw a lot of flowers, but I was drawn initially to the roses. There were different colors, and I actually, feel the softness or the smoothness of the petals. But then, I got drawn to a lotus, and I was trying to hold the stem, but I couldn't, get the fragrance. And I was watching it for some time in my hand. That's what I could see. But it was very beautiful to see suddenly the white canvas come up with so many flowers. Thank you.
Any other?
I think Abby saw transformation, didn't you, Abby?
Anyway, what you see, this is an example of the sixth sense or the sense mind of the Manas. You see that in such a short time, doing such an exercise that was spread out all over the world, and that through internet, most of you could feel the fragrance. From where did it come? Is not only sheer imagination. You see, you imagine, but then imagination has become sensitive, it has become real. If you know the significances of the flowers given by the mother, then you can understand. There is another part to this exercise. There are three parts to this exercise. One is that holding of your name, that means the concentration of the vital. The concentration of the vital part in us, that was first necessary to do this exercise. That's why I recommended to see the name at first chance. So the vital is concentrated and not thrown away here and there. And then the flower, if you know the significance of the flowers as given by the mother, then you know what meaning it brings to you, what spiritual significance it has to you. For example, James knew that he was seeing plasticity, and that plasticity was is something which is needed in his nature in the type of work he is doing. He's doing the work with all sorts of people, with all sorts of ideas and things, and he needs to be plastic enough to integrate all these things in his consciousness. So but the main purpose of this exercise was to show you the sense mind. It was the sense mind of the Manas that connects the outer senses with our inner subtle things that cause you to have the fragrance or see the flowers or touch the flowers in a very different way. So the sense mind is something which is actually It is within us. And you can understand that it is superior to our usual senses. In fact, it is more basic. It is from there from all the senses have arisen. I'm not talking in anatomical or physiological terms. I'm talking in psychological and mystical terms. So that is the manas, that is the sense mind. Now the second thing is our inner being, inner senses in the inner being. The inner being is something which is very special to Sri Aurobindo. In fact, Sri Aurobindo psychology starts from the inner being. The inner being is positioned between our external being and between our inmost being. External being which is rotating around the ego, and our inmost being which is our soul. In between the two, in between the soul and the external being, that is the inner being. The inner being is not the soul. Inner being is not the soul. It is in between the soul and the external being. But this inner being rises up to the superconscious. It descends into the unconscious, and sidewise it opens into the cosmic consciousness. So the inner being, just imagine the inner being, which is behind our outer or surface personality, our surface being, which is rising up to the superconscious, descending below to the unconscious, and spreading out to the cosmic consciousness. Now, this inner being has got an inner mind, has got an inner vital, has got an inner physical. It has got an inner mind, it has got an inner vital, it has got an inner physical. And the inner physical, the word inner physical doesn't sound nice in English, so we use the word subtle physical. Sri Aurobindo used the word subtle physical. The subtle physical has got inner senses, and these inner senses are structured differently. They have inner senses which have no connection with the outer senses. They are just inner senses. Of course, their effects are felt by the outer senses, but they are not connected like that with the outer senses, except manas does some connection. But the inner senses have to be viewed differently. And in all matters of parapsychology, for example, in hypnosis, in telekinesis, in all sorts of parapsychological all insights, they all are based on the inner senses. It is the inner senses which make you feel when you sit in meditation, which sometimes you can hear voices, sometimes you can hear fragrances, you can smell fragrances, you can have different types of experiences. They are the inner being's experiences. The inner senses are the inner being's experiences. So the inner senses are what is called the subliminal senses, are very active. You see, normally we might not be aware of it, but we can be aware of it in dreams. In dreams, the subliminal comes, the inner being comes to us in dreams. You see, most of the dreams that we see are superficial dreams. They come from the subconscious. So they are what you call hodgepodge events of life. But there are certain dreams which are different, which are veridical. They are veridical in the sense that they carry a weight, they carry an authority, they are problem solving. Sometimes they can tell you about an impending disaster, an impending death. So these dreams are the inner being's dreams. So that type of communication that goes to the inner being's dreams, that type of communication without dreams, that is available also in us. We are not aware of it, though we are not aware of it. But to become aware of it, we have to go inmost to our psychic being, because the psychic being uses the inner being. The external being uses the ego as its fulcrum. The external being uses the ego as its fulcrum, but the psychic being uses the inner being as its fulcrum. So if we go to the psychic being, if we have the psychic experiences, if we go to the psychic being, then we can be more open to the inner being's experiences, inner senses, to the subliminal senses, to the inner senses, they will become more active within us. So the main principle is to go and concentrate on the psychic being which is behind everything, and you concentrate there, and then because the psychic being needs instruments to act, and one of the instruments to act for his action is the inner being senses. But the inner being senses also are not fully pure. They can carry impurity also, because the inner being is open to the cosmic consciousness, and the cosmic consciousness has got positive things, has got negative things also. The cosmic consciousness has not only got positive things, it has got negative things also. So when your inner being is open to the cosmic consciousness, which is a very good thing, if you can open it to the cosmic consciousness, then all the good things in the cosmic consciousness can rush into your inner being, but all the bad things have the same attraction. They can come to the inner being also. All the most stupid things can also come inside. So that is a risky zone. It is a very risky zone. But in any case, it is something quite different. It is quite different, and we have to know to develop our inner beings, our inner senses. So the inner senses, to depend on that, not to depend upon the ego, but to depend upon the psychic being. And when we more and more concentrate on the psychic being, then the psychic being will use the instruments of which the senses are, inner being senses are most important, and they will automatically develop. Now the third thing that I will tell is the sense in its purity. Sense in its purity. So the manas of the sixth sense, we talked about the junctional zone between our external being and internal being, is a very good thing, but then it is not fully pure, because it is mixed with life, and life has got discords. So what happens is that instead of the bliss, it turns into a principle of pleasure and pain. And the inner being, the inner senses, they also have a very greater value. They also have a much greater value, but they also have their limitations. But sense in its purity, what is that? I'll give you a concrete example of the mother. The mother in 1967, 12th April, 1 month before the Summer of Love. You know, the Summer of Love happened in 1967 in San Francisco, when youth from all over the world assembled with one agenda: to question anything and to question everything. To question anything and to question everything. That was the agenda. And it is from that Summer of Love movement that all the things that started of the new world, whether it is the Beatles, whether it is the hippies, whether it is the new drugs, the psychedelics, the LSD, the psychedelics, and all the new things that started, which influenced the young generation, all started with the Summer of Love. The Summer of Love was an epitome of that movement. Now, Summer of Love happened in 1967, 1 month before the Summer of Love, in April, 12th of April. The mother wanted to have an LSD experience. She wanted to know at the age of 89 what the youth were wanting. What was the youth wanting? What was the youth wanting at that time? And she wanted to have the LSD experience without actually consuming LSD. She didn't actually consume LSD, but she had a full LSD experience. She brought it upon herself. She thought it necessary to bring it onto herself, the experience, to understand the psychology of the youth of that time. And you can understand what a great effort it was at whatever 89-year-old woman to do that. And she has given a vivid description, a very vivid description, where she speaks of an explosion, where she has an experience of an explosion of sensations. An explosion of sensations. And she describes, a very important her description is, because it is now fitting with the scientific value, with the scientific things. She describes that she found there was a disequilibrium in the mind, a disequilibrium in the mind, and a disequilibrium was such that it favored a magnification of sensation. Senses were magnified at the cost of disequilibrium, at the cost of downsizing of some areas. There was a magnification of the senses. The senses were magnified, huge magnification of senses at the cost of the disequilibrium of the being. So something was causing a disequilibrium of the being, and for which the sensation had become magnified. Now it is very interesting because so long we used to think that psychedelics increase brain activity. Science believes that psychedelics increase brain activity and increase serotonin activity. But only now it has been found out that it is a different ball game. The psychedelic experience is a different ball game. It might open the doors of perception. It might open or magnify the doors of perception at the cost of downsizing of other areas. Other areas might be downsized, causing other areas might be inhibited, causing the door of perception to widen, and to bring in the LSD experience. So now what kind of experience was this? This was a magnification of senses she was seeing. How she was seeing? By her sense. What sense? A supramental sense. What is the supramental sense? Is a thing which can see the spiritual essence of the whole thing from many different levels simultaneously. It is a sense which sees or catches hold of the spiritual value of things from very different levels, of consciousness. At many levels of consciousness, the thing is happening. Thing is not happening only at the spiritual level. It is happening at the vital level. It is happening at the physical level. It is happening at the mental level. To see all the levels together at one time, instantaneously. That is the supramental sense. At the same time, it is aware of the unity of creation. At the same time, it is aware of the unity of creation. It is not disconnected from the unity of creation. So it knows that everything has to be in its proper place. The supramental sense sees things, but doesn't see things independent of each other. Sees things as all embedded in a matrix of oneness. All embedded in a matrix of oneness. So that's, of course, is a very difficult thing for us to understand. But I'm telling you this example because it's a very interesting example, and it is given by the mother herself, this supramental sense and how this sense acts. So this is, mother has said that it is an oceanic and ethereal sense. It is an oceanic and ethereal sense. Aurobindo said that it is an oceanic and ethereal sense. Oceanic and ethereal sense. And actually, what is sense? If you follow this, actually sense means the contact of consciousness with an object. Actually, sense is the contact of consciousness with an object, which we translate into many different kinds of things. We translate into many different kind of values. We translate into many different kind of meanings. We translate it into many different ways. But actually, it is the contact of consciousnness with the object. That is the actual sense. And this spiritual sense or the supramental sense, which is the sense in its total purity, and that is happening from very high above. But the inconscious is not there. The supramental sense is there. You see, the supramental consciousness is the consciousness where the inconscious has no effect. Inconscious comes afterwards. The overmind creates the inconscious. So below the supermind is the overmind, which creates the inconscious. But the supermind has no inconscious, and therefore it is free from any negative effect. And then whatever is there, any idea, and any idea in its origin in the supermind is an essence. any idea in its origin at the supermind is an essence. That essence becomes a transcript in the subtle physical. It becomes a transcript in the subtle physical. See, what was an essence in the supermind, an idea or an essential idea, or idea in essence and principle, what is there in the supermind, when it has to manifest, it has to first come to the subtle physical, to the inner being. When it has to manifest, it doesn't manifest into the external being at once. It comes through the inner being to the external being. So whatever is there as an idea in the supermind, as an essence, as an essential idea, or the essence of any idea, that becomes that descends down the levels of consciousness, the overmind and intuition and other levels of consciousness, until it becomes a transcript at the level of the subtle physical. Now, the subtle physical, all the transcripts at the level of subtle physical, the transcripts are there. Some of these transcripts will be manifested in the actual physical consciousness. Actual physical consciousness, they will be manifested. There are other transcripts which are not manifested. All transcripts are not manifested. Some transcripts are manifested in the physical consciousness, they become the physical things. All things are not manifested. All the transcripts are, everything is there. The transcript of everything is there in the subtle physical. In the transcript of the, see, the transcript of the Jivatma is there. It doesn't mean that it is going to manifest in the physical. So the transcript of everything is there in the subtle physical, and from the transcript to then it shifts to the physical world. Mother said that it is a motionless shift. Mother said, described that it is a motionless shift occurs, a motionless shift. A shift occurs in levels of consciousness, but a shift is motionless, automatic. The shift is, you cannot understand in our terms of time. Motionless means it is not understood in our terms of time. Our terms of time, our terms of space, it is not understood in that. So whatever is an essence in the supermind comes down and becomes a transcript in this subtle physical, and from the subtle physical it shifts. Some of them shift to the physical to produce physical objects, physical things, physical values. So whatever we see in the physical world has actually been designed in the supramental world and has come down as a transcript in the subtle physical before being manifested in the physical consciousness. So this is reality, and everything is not going to manifest. All things that are there in the subtle physical, there are all many things are there in the cosmic consciousness, because the subtle physical is the part of the inner being, and the inner being is connected with the cosmic consciousness. So whatever are archetypes in the cosmic consciousness, they come down. Whatever are archetypes in the cosmic consciousness, they come down and they produce the transcripts, and these transcripts are going to be manifested really in our terms real. Of course, in their world, they are also real. In our world, real is that what we perceive by our senses, we consider them as real. And in our world, they are going to be, that shift is going to be there, the shift from the subtle physical to the physical. So you can understand that in this whole process, the thing which was pure in the supramental essence, it gets modified, reflected, deflected, distorted. When it is manifest in the physical, you cannot expect to find the true essence. For the true essence of the same thing, you have to go backwards. We have to go backwards to the subtle physical to know its subtle physical antecedents. And then from there, we can climb to the supramental to find out the real essence of the whole thing. So whatever is manifested in the physical, whatever is manifested in the physical consciousness is not pure, is not perfect. There is some imperfection because of the transmission from a very high level to the downward level, to the level of the divisive consciousness. There is bound to be difference in quality, difference in quantity, everything will be different. So therefore, to reach out to the purity of everything, purity of sensation, we have to go to the subtle physical, and then from the subtle physical, if you can find out one day, it will be possible for us to move towards a more spiritual sense. Thank you. I will stop here. And if there are any questions or any comments, you are welcome.
Dr. Basu, may I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
How does one know that one has attained some form of sensory purity, achieved some sensory purity? How does one know?
If one is aware of one's psychic being, then you are aware of your psychic being, then you can think that certain amount of inner senses will be active. Some amount of purity will be there.
So inner senses being active is purity?
Not totally, but much more than the outer world. Sense in its total purity is the supramental sense. But for us, for practical levels, purity is shifting to the inner being senses.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
May I ask you? Yes. My subtle physical sensations are very active. I am able to feel the presence of both good and bad. And what can I do if I sense the presence of something bad?
I think that if you are lucky enough to have both the sensations of good and bad at the inner level, then you should concentrate on the psychic to make its choice. When you make a choice, when you try to make a choice, then you can bring the external mind. Then the things will be spoiled. When you want to make a choice, then you bring the external mind. And external mind has doubts, has contradictions, so thing will be spoiled. So better to be positioned in the psychic and see what your intuition says. Do according to your intuition. But for your intuition, you have to go to the psychic and concentrate there on the psychic.
What is the role of the intuition here? I'm able to sense it. And I'm very sure that something is good and something is bad. So using my intuition, what am I supposed to do?
To select what is good and what is bad, to select.
To select.
But the intuition I'm telling is of a very high order, of a very superior intuition. Sri Aurobindo speaks of intuition from a very high level of intuition. Above the higher mind, above the illumined mind, that is intuition. And that intuition can be brought down. It can also be brought down to the psychic, which is easier. And to take decisions from there, what to do.
Sir, at this level, with the kind of growth I have made, I am able to only sense things. I'm not able to make this kind of choice. Like it comes unavoidable. It is in the atmosphere. Even in my work spot, I'm able to sense it. But how am I to choose? I cannot decide the presence of good and bad, subtle things.
That we have to develop the power of intuition. We once did a session on that. We got the past slides. past sessions, you'll find out once we done a session on intuition. But we can do it again. Intuition has to be developed. But for you, the better is to go to concentrate on the psychic being. That will help a lot. But there are other ways of developing intuition, not only going to the psychic, but going above your mind. It is a whole process, but that intuition has to be developed. Otherwise, pseudo intuitions come, false intuitions come, and they can take their place. That is the risk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Basu, I have a question. When one is totally open to the mother, then one is also open to cosmic consciousness. Is that right?
Yes.
So then, when these darker forces come in, besides turning upwards and offering it to the mother, is there any other way one can overcome these darker forces?
Many things we have to do. We have to offer to the mother, but then one's ego has to be tackled. Ego has to be tackled. One has to go beyond the ego, and the inconscience needs to be reached. To clean the inconscience, one must also know how to clean the inconscience a bit. We cannot do it fully, but a bit cleaning can be done. And the other hand, the ego has to be completely shut away, make place for the psychic being to come. Unless these things are done, it is very difficult.
We think with the mental mind, that I'm working on my ego, but the little parts of the ego must be coming up. How do we get rid of that?
Now, you can do it in two ways. One is working at the level of the ego to obliterate its action. That is going to take ages, going to take many lives. The other is to bring the psychic being in front, which will send the ego to its other place and it will take over the functions of the ego. That is easier. Means that is also difficult. But with opening to the mother, because mother's grace works on the psychic being at present. So it is much easier for the psychic to be brought to be in front, and it will send the ego to its own place and it will take the place of the ego. And we can also start from the ego, but it will take many centuries, many ages, many lives. It is not so easy. You see, one example I will tell you about the physical ego. Ego has many parts. There is the intellectual ego, which you can get over by getting over your intellectual ideas. There is the vital ego, which you can get over by getting over your desires. But there's the physical ego, which is holding your physical body. The mental ego holds your intellectuality. You can do without it. The vital ego deals with the life energy, with the desires and all. You can manage something up without it. But the physical ego is holding the body. So mother was trying to get over the physical ego without disrupting the body. And she found it very difficult. And she reached a point where she said it could be this or that. Means she could not have survived. And then she had to invoke Shiva. And Shiva's power of destruction was invoked to destroy the physical ego. And then Aurobindo said, when the ego has been totally what do you call, one has completely taken over his functions, or one has completely done with it, there is still a sub-threshold ego, an impression of an ego, and subtle impression of an ego that floats on the surface. And many people, Sri Aurobindo said, thought on reaching that, they think that they reach the Brahman. So at the level of the ego, it is very difficult. Much better, fortunate for us that the mother has given us this opportunity of the psychic being, relying on the psychic being, allowing the psychic being to come to the front. Our grace acts on the psychic being. That is the luck we have.
Dr. Basu, is there any place where we can read more about the junctional mind? Any book or thing you can refer me to?
There are scattered places. I have written a monograph on it. It is to be published.
Okay. So since you said it is the place where we generally take our poise, our station, you know, it is between the external and the inner senses, you were saying. So obviously it's a very large zone that needs to be worked upon. Maybe that is the area that needs purification.
Of course, that and the senses of the inner being.
Exactly. So I'd like to know a little more about that. So should we wait for your book to be published?
Yeah. Then the monograph is there.
Okay. Can that be forwarded to James Baby and distributed?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Or you can write an article, Dr. Basu, about it in NAMAH. Very, very precious, yeah. Does anyone else have anything they want to share or ask a question?
But my book, Consciousness-Based Psychology, has something of it, which you can read. You can buy, find it in Amazon.
I have the book. I have the book, but I'm reading it very, very slowly because I really need to absorb it. So yes, thank you.
I have a question about where can I go to learn more about this? I'm a registered nurse in Canada and I'm dissatisfied with my job and the environment that I practice in. So I've been considering shifting my work and becoming an integral health coach. I don't even really know what to call it. But where can I go to learn more about this? I haven't been able to find anywhere in my area, but I have been attending seminars that have been sponsored by NAMAH and reading lots of books. But I would love to learn more so that I can help myself and then help others.
There are quite a few people in Canada actually that we're in touch with. And I can give you their email addresses. We have a little bit of a community in Canada, so I can give you their email addresses, and that may be of benefit to you, Alison, if you'd like me to do that.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Okay. So does anyone else have anything else they want to share or ask Dr. Basu before we conclude the program? Yeah.
It's a good thing that happened today with the exercise. Everybody participated. I was very happy, and we could have a feeling of the sense mind, which is very important.
Yeah.
Could we please do a webinar on ego?
We've done one.
We did one.
We did one, Joshua, about 18 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I can send you the recordings.
Thank you.
The next program that Dr. Basu is undertaking is titled On Consciousness. And it's taking place from the 21st of August until the 25th of August. 6 sessions, 4 o'clock to 5:30 Indian Standard Time. And it's the title is On Consciousness. That's currently being worked out. We're just getting the brochure prepared for that particular program. Should be excellent. Yeah. So, thank you very much, everyone, one of you for your presence over the last 12 sessions. It's been very wonderful to witness, and we've really enjoyed putting together this program for you on the path of purification. And it's an ongoing process. It takes a long time to purify the being, but every work we put into this and every time we open to the Mother's Force, it creates it's a way forward, and it brings more light into our being, more purity into our being, and helps us evolve into more conscious human beings. I've just circulated a feedback form on the group, and we'd love you to fill that in if you can do that. And the recording of this particular session, the recording folder will be finalized on Monday. So today's session will be circulated on Monday in the recording folder. Now the summaries will be done by Chetna, and so we're tremendously grateful for your support and your participation in these events, because it's without you it's nothing. And particular thanks go to Dr. Basu for facilitating this particular session. It's been a wonderful experience for us all. And that exercise with the sensory, with the flowers was really quite something, you know. So, unless anyone has anything they want to say now before we close.
Just wanted to express full gratitude for this series, this workshop of the 12
Thank
days.
you, Maya.
Excellent,
Maya.
excellent, very diverse. It just touched all aspects of around purifying consciousness. Excellent program. Thank you.
Yeah, there has been diversity, isn't there, in the approaches and the content. Yeah. Thank you, Maya. Yeah. Thank you. So, we have many more workshops and programs lined up for you. Ones that resonate with you, please join us. Yes. So namaste to you all. Thank you, Dr. Basu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until we meet again. Bye, everyone.